Donald Trump's busy first day, and what it means for Canada and tariffs. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Canada is not out of the woods yet. Speaking to news reporters as he spent almost an hour signing executive orders on his first day back in office, U.S. President Donald Trump didn't rule out imposing tariffs on Canada as soon as February 1st. He called Canada a very bad abuser.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
When do you think you would enact those?
I think February 1st.
Are you planning on giving notice of that?
I think we'll do it February 1st.
25% on both, sir?
Sir, on each.
Later in his news conference, President Trump expanded on why he thinks these tariffs are needed. He accused all countries of taking advantage of the United States.
We have a deficit with almost, not all, there are a couple, I won't tell you their names because I don't want them to find out about it because they'll feel stupid. But there are a couple of countries that actually don't make money with us. But I don't want to let you know because they'll immediately change that. But we're gonna do. I tell you what, our country has an amazing economic future. I really believe that.
What kind of universal tariff if you did do one?
Well, you'd put a universal tariff on anybody doing business in the United States because they're coming in and they're stealing our wealth, they're stealing our jobs, they're stealing our companies, they're hurting our companies. So you put a tariff on to keep them from doing that.
There was no executive order yesterday imposing a 25% tariff on all Canadian exports to the United States. On currency markets, the Canadian dollar rallied on that news. Currently, the loonie is trading at 69.80 cents US. It's down just slightly today. Here at home, Prime Minister Trudeau and members of his cabinet have been meeting at a resort in Montebello, Quebec, not far from Ottawa. Several cabinet ministers reacted to the Trump tariff news yesterday, including the new federal finance minister, Dominic LeBlanc. He suggested Trump's latest remarks won't change the Canadian government's plans to respond to any tariffs from the Trump administration.
Our government has been preparing with the incoming administration a conversation around how the economy of Canada and the economy of the United States and the cost of living in both countries and secure access to energy supplies, to critical minerals, is best when we work together. And applying tariffs to imports from Canada wouldn't benefit the economy of the United States. It clearly would have been negative for the Canadian economy. So we remain very much on the job to protect the Canadian economy. If the administration wants to study the economic and trade relationship between Canada and the United States, we think that's a positive opportunity for us to continue to tell the Americans and obviously Canadians as well the importance of working together and how both countries are stronger and more secure when we respect and honor a comprehensive free trade agreement. It's in the interest of American consumers and American businesses, but it's also very much in our own economic interest to maintain that partnership with the United States.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, who was on CNN last week accusing Donald Trump of trying to start a trade war, said the Canadian government is already addressing Trump's concerns over issues like the border.
It's important to remind ourselves is when President Trump tweeted back in December that he had concerns with the border and fentanyl, we acted, and we acted swiftly. And we presented a very strong border plan, which was presented by Dominic and also is being implemented by David right now. And we got some very positive feedback from the administration. And of course, meanwhile, we made sure to push for our interests and to convince a lot of Republican senators and key Republican decision makers about the value of a win-win relationship. So we'll continue to roll up our sleeves, and for all those watching us right now, what is really, really important is we need to continue to be Team Canada, and we need to be united.
Canada's Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, Stephen Guilbeault, has his own issues with the incoming Trump administration, calling Trump's decision to have the United States pull out of the Paris Climate Accord deplorable.
It is deplorable that the President of the United States has decided to pull out of the Paris Agreement. It is unfortunately not the first time that he's done that. He's done that in his first presidency. The Paris Agreement is larger than one country. It's 194 countries, and we have collectively continued working to fight climate change despite the absence of the United States. And one should forget that despite the fact that the federal government no longer seems interested in fighting climate change, we see a lot of support within U.S. states, municipalities, the private sector, and it is quite ironic that the president would do that as California is going through one of the worst forest fire season in its history.
In addition to renewing his tariff threat and pulling the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord, Donald Trump spent day one pardoning people for their roles in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. He also declared a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border, and he moved to create the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to be led by billionaire Elon Musk. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Well, let's get right to the professor for his weekly insights. Professor Ian Lee is back with us from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Good day.
Good afternoon, Rob.
So the big story today is that President Donald Trump said tariffs could still be coming for Canada maybe as soon as February 1st, 25% tariffs. Do you still think that's the case, or is this just another negotiating tactic from President Trump? What do you think?
I think it's both. I don't think, well, let me unpack this.
Sure.
I do think that, by the way, let me back up. I just finished reading one of the most remarkable papers. It's an academic, quasi-academic paper, and it's 41 pages long, written by the man who just got appointed to be the chief economist to the White House, called the Council of Economic Advisors. Okay, and this guy, we're reading in Canada, and I'm hearing from pundits and cabinet ministers and so forth that the people, Trump and the people around him, don't know anything. They just, winging it. Whatever jumps into Trump's head, it becomes what comes out of his mouth, and there's no logic, there's no rationale. I'm not here to defend Trump. I just don't believe that you become the president of the United States or the head of a major corporation because you're just a bozo who doesn't even, what's up and what's down. I just don't believe that. It may appeal to progressives who've never worked in business, but I came from the real world. I came from banking, and I know that that's not how business people operate, and you don't get to that level because you're, that crazy or you're that uninformed. So I went and did some research, and this paper was written only 60 days ago by this individual who has a PhD, by the way, from Harvard, and economics, by the way. And it's a unbelievably, it's a remarkable article. And what this article does, by the way, his name is Stephen Marin, M-A-R-I-N. Okay, I read the whole paper, and it's a tour de force. It's called a user's guide to restructuring the global trading system. And what he did is he wrote this paper before Trump appointed him to the White House. And what he's done is he has a deep understanding of economics, and he's read all of Trump's speeches, and he understands where Trump's head is. And he's basically written down and codified in a 41-page article what Trump's vision is. And it's very rational,
okay,
and it's grounded
in
a lot of economic theory. And I'll state it very bluntly to get right to the point, and then we can talk about Canada, okay? Trump does have a very clear vision. And there is a lot of research going on in some of the elite universities about geonomics And geonomics is not the traditional economics that I grew up with. The trade is good, and I do believe it is, by the way. But the traditional view of comparative advantage, countries specialize in what they're best at, and so on. So geonomics is this idea that national security and other issues that weren't normally or previously seen as part of trade policy are now part of it. Okay, let's cut to the chase.
All right.
Trump and his speech yesterday validated what this guy wrote in this 41-page paper 60 days ago. Trump has a clear vision that basically from the end of the Second World War until today, what we would call the liberal international economic order, the UN, the World Bank, the IMF, the Bretton Woods, the whole international architecture, whereby the U.S., yes, was the superpower, but it agreed to be hamstrung by trade agreements and WHO and international bodies like the UN and the IMF, and it would pretend it was equal with all the other countries, so that it was an equal trading partner with Canada and Germany, and it would abide by the rules. And even if those rules went against American interests, they would accept it as part of this international order. And that was the order that governed the world for the last 75 years. Trade, Trump thinks it's been a big mistake. Okay? And he is determined. He has a very clear vision. He is going to, as he said yesterday, make America first. We're going to do things that make America first. So what my interpretation of this article is, and I think it's very sincere, by the way, and I think it's very real and accurate, is that the American superpower, I like to call it the hegemon, nice big academic word. So the U.S. is the hegemon, which is another word for superpower. The hegemon has decided, under Trump, to become even more hegemonic. In other words, they've decided to become more powerful. And they're going to use their power. Trump has a very clear understanding, and this article says so, that every country in the world wants access to the U.S. because it's the biggest and the strongest and the most dynamic economy in the world. And there's a line in this article which is stunning. It says, Trump believes... So he's obviously had a close relationship with Trump in writing this article. He said Trump believes it is a privilege for other countries, not a right under trade
to
agreement.
Have access to the U.S. market.
Access the American market, and you must pay a price for that privilege. And that price will not only include open access to American companies into your country, but you will also include that you're going to pay your fair share of the American security blanket of the 2% or more of national defense spending.
Or border security or what have you, right?
And so this article, by the way, and it's written by, it's got lots of quotes, citations to other academic research about the impact of tariffs on the exchange rate, on competitiveness, on inflation, etc. So it's very well researched, I assure you. Just people don't want to read it, that's okay, take it on trust. I'm not trying to say that that this is the truth. I'm just simply saying they have a clear vision, a clear theory. And there are many who have been saying for the last 2 weeks that Trump doesn't even know why he's doing tariffs other than he just likes tariffs. He's irrational. And these are people who don't know what they're talking about, including some of our cabinet ministers. Because if you read this article, it's very clear. They've looked at it, and they have determined that the cost of, and they acknowledge in this article, he acknowledges that the tariffs will impose a cost on the United States, but it's much less than the benefits that they will get from imposing tariffs on countries, friend and foe. One other important point. Just let me finish, Rob.
Okay, well, I can't let you finish right now. We'll have to stop here, and you can finish when you come back, because I have other things that I want to get to with you, and what this could mean for Canadian businesses, and what we're hearing from the Canadian government about income relief programs or compensating Canadian businesses. Mr. Trudeau was speaking to that today. When we come back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University here on News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Back with Professor Ian Lee. You wanted to finish off your thought there.
Rob,
Trump tariffs on Canada.
Said that first off, he made it very, very clear that they're not going to do everybody gets hit with 25%. He said that very clearly. He says we're going to start low and work our way up if they don't respond to change the policies we don't like in their country. So he made it very clear that they see tariffs as a means to an end to change the policies of other countries, contrary to many people who are in Canada saying there's no rhyme nor reason to it, starting with the Prime Minister, who is just simply flat out wrong because he doesn't understand what's going on. And I know that sounds blunt. The author, now the chief economist of Trump, said they're going to classify all the countries into 3 buckets. The worst offenders who are going to get hit with the highest tariffs, those that are not doing too badly will get hit with modest tariffs, and the third category, those who aren't causing any harm to the states that won't get tariffed at all. Secondly, he said they will not be across the board. We will not cutting off our nose to spite our face, basically. We will do it selectively to hurt them, not us, to get them to change their policies that we don't like. So I'm predicting, and based on what Trump said yesterday, he said energy national is an emergency, same with food prices. They are not, when he does apply tariffs in whether it's a month or 2 months, it will not be on energy exports to the U.S., and it won't be on agricultural exports because it would be counterproductive to what he just said. So there's going to be tariffs probably, but they will be smaller, not bigger, and it won't be across the board on all Canadian exports to the U.S.
Okay. Mr. Trudeau, we don't have time to play the clip, but Mr. Trudeau seemed to suggest today that if Canadians are hit with tariffs, that the government would be there with some kind of income relief program for Canadian workers or compensation for affected Canadian businesses. What do you think?
It is so typical of the Liberals and Mr. Trudeau that, the whole world, if all you own is a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. That is his go-to instinct every time. On pandemic, anything. We're going to rush out to the front and announce new spending programs because that's how they think. They think of it, all solutions call for government to come in and tax more money and spend more money. Not once have I heard him or any Liberal cabinet minister say, look, everybody, tariffs are destructive. They're going to be catastrophic. We cannot win in a trade war. I mean, no serious person believes that a $2 trillion economy can beat.
Well, Mr. Trudeau has been saying it would hurt both sides. Tariffs would hurt both sides.
He is flat out wrong. Okay, let me be blunt. The idea, that a $2 trillion economy can do a standoff with a $25 trillion economy is ludicrous. His own father said that they're the elephant, we're the mouse. So what will happen is if we do impose countervailing on them, which I hope we never do, we will lose because they will shake it off. They're $25 trillion. They'll barely feel it. They'll just shake it off. He should be saying, but he's not, we've got to get to him next week and start talking about we want to move CUSMA, the deal required in 2026 to be renegotiated. We want to move it up right now. Today, because it is in nobody's interest. We've got to start anew and discuss a new deal. Those words have never crossed the lips of anybody in the Liberal cabinet. We've got to discuss negotiations for a new CUSMA. All they want to talk about is retaliation that we will lose catastrophically.
All right. Well, we'll see where things stand when you join us again next week. Thank you again. Great to hear from you.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah. Professor Ian Lee, Associate Professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. I'm Rob Snow, our Newsday panel just ahead with much to discuss today with our panelists. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now you know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
Yes, it is time for the Newsday panel featuring today Josie Sabatino, Senior Consultant at Summa Strategies. Great to hear from you. Welcome back, Josie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Chris Day is the president of Winston Wilmot. Hello, Chris Day. Welcome back to you as well.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
So with President Donald Trump now starting his second term and still threatening to impose tariffs on Canada as soon as February 1st, how do you think this has changed the ballot question for the next Canadian election? In other words, is the top ballot question now, what is the best party to deal with Donald Trump? What do you think, Josie?
I think yes. The short answer
Yes?
is for sure yes, but there are also the many economic factors to take into consideration when thinking about this question. I mean, the fact of the matter remains is that we still are in this cost of living crisis. And while we're seeing some of those inflation numbers go down, things are still very unaffordable for Canadians as they're looking at their household budgets. And then if you factor in what we're seeing with Trump and some of his behavior, and certainly indicating that tariffs are still very much on the table and are likely to come down the pipe in the short term, I mean, that will cause a massive hit to our economy. So a lot of these policies, I think, we'll see play out, go hand in hand. I do think Canadians certainly want leadership when it comes to the immediate problem of what happens if Donald Trump does impose these tariffs.
Okay. Christe, what do you think? Has the ballot question changed?
I am not as convinced that the ballot question has changed to the point where it's not going to be a change election.
Okay.
It's undeniable that the Trump tariffs pose the biggest threat to Canada's economy in years. But I would think that the Liberals will be hard-pressed to make the case that they are the ones who are best placed to counter Mr. Trump and his tariff-imposing predispositions, because they have consistently taken themselves out of consideration as being a serious interlocutor with Donald Trump over the last few years. They've criticized him publicly. There's the disdain between the Prime Minister and the President is well known. They have essentially at the most critical time created a power vacuum and communications chaos in Ottawa, around the world, but most importantly in Washington.
Okay.
And I was so struck by the fact that they were holed up at a chalet in Montebello talking to one another this week, rather than being down in Washington having the conversations with people that matter. Nothing speaks more to where the Liberals are at right now. It's this internal navel-gazing and chaos. So for their sake, they better hope that the ballot question is not who's best to deal with it, with the Trump threat. But I still think generally that the electorate is in a, we need to move beyond these people, let them sort themselves out. And I think that will only benefit Mr. Poilievre and the Conservatives.
Right. Plus, as chilly as it was in Washington yesterday at -3, it's much colder. We would take that, and I'm sure many Liberal cabinet ministers would certainly take that in Montebello, where we are in the deep freeze. Of course, Montebello not far from where I am, and it's -17 degrees right now. But let's kind of strip out everything else, Josie. Poilievre is a carbon tax election now, and everything else that maybe before this threat, this election could have been about cost of living, housing, or just overall, what Chris said, change. It's time for a change. If this is the ballot question, who is the best party to deal with Donald Trump? Does that necessarily swing the advantage, say, back to the Liberals in any appreciable way? What do you think?
Absolutely not. When you're looking at
right.
Poilievre's message, I think what he has done right is focus on how to make Canada more competitive and how to make life more affordable for Canadians. And when you're considering the context of the U.S. banging at the door, I mean, those things matter. Canadians need to be able to hang on to their jobs and have security, but we also need to make sure that, we're getting rid of red tape where possible and making Canada the most competitive environment possible so that we are bringing in foreign investment and things like that. And what the Liberals are absolutely doing wrong at this stage is still putting Justin Trudeau out the window. I mean, if he refused to call the election, he certainly should be taking a back seat on this front and letting people like Dominic LeBlanc step up to carry that message until things can be decided with that Liberal leadership race. Why he is out there at this juncture, just kind of pouring salt on the wound, I have no idea.
Okay. Same question to you, Christe. If that ballot question is who is the best party to deal with Trump, does that necessarily give an edge to, say, the Liberals over other parties? What do you think? As Mr. Trudeau said today during his news, we've been there before. We've been through this before. We've dealt with Trump before, for example.
Well, and I don't think that benefits them because Mr. Trump has made very clear that he doesn't want anything to do with the prime minister. He didn't want anything to do with the deputy prime minister before she resigned. He hasn't really seemed to be swayed by any arguments made by any of the remaining cabinet ministers. Interestingly, Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May have taken themselves totally out of consideration as serious parties with respect to Donald Trump. So I cannot see the ballot question, if it is, who's best to deal with Donald Trump, benefiting anyone but Pierre Poilievre. And to anyone who might take exception with that, I would really strongly recommend that you look at the social media presence of each of the three main party leaders over the last few months, or few weeks rather, and compare the messaging that Pierre and Justin and Jagmeet have all put out. Pierre has been, I think, head and shoulders above in terms of where most Canadians are at on this.
Okay, we'll be right back. It's our Newsday panel. I'm Rob Snow. Our panelists are all here talking about the current events of the day. And this is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
We're here with our Newsday panelist, Josie Sabatinos with Summa Strategies, and Chris Day is the president of Winston Wilmot. Just want to bring our listeners up to date on everything that's happening with Trump and tariffs and the domestic political situation. We have Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservative Party, of course, the leader of the official opposition. He has just issued a statement headlined "Emergency, Reopen Parliament Now." Let me read a little bit here. Canada is facing a critical challenge. On February 1st, we are facing the risk of unjustified 25% tariffs by our largest trading partner that would have damaging consequences across our country. Our American counterparts say they want to stop the flow of illegal drugs and other criminal activity at the border. The Liberal government admits their weak border is a problem. That is why they announced a multi-billion-dollar border plan, a plan they cannot fund because they shut down Parliament, preventing MPs and senators from authorizing the funds, something I pointed out next week. The $1.6 billion border plan it's a great-looking headline, but it's funded over 6 years, and there's only maybe about $85 million that is funded to this point, and that lapses at the end of March. Parliament has to be recalled to deal with the rest. It goes on. We also need retaliatory tariffs, something that requires urgent parliamentary consideration. Liberals have shut Parliament in the middle of this crisis. Canada has never been so weak, and things have never been so out of control. Liberals are putting themselves and their leadership politics ahead of the country. Freeland and Carney are fighting for power rather than fighting for Canada. So that's a statement from Pierre Poilievre, leader of the opposition. Josie, any thoughts on what Mr. Poilievre is saying there?
Well, I think Chris was correct in his earlier comments when he pointed out the fact that, the Liberals are sitting in Montebello trying to come up with a plan. And I think Poilievre hits the nail on the head. We need leadership right now. And this unprecedented crisis that we find ourselves in, with a government that is not sitting, with a Liberal leadership going on, and a prime minister who, doesn't have the mandate to be fighting this at this exact juncture. All of these things come together and coalesce. And I think anybody looking at this statement from Poilievre will, to borrow some of his words, see it as a common sense plan. People want leadership, and we should demand it given the current situation facing us.
Chris Day?
I mean, what an interesting test that would be of previous statements by Mr. Singh and others that at the earliest opportunity they would bring down the government on a money matter. Right. That's going to be, I think, I don't think this has any chance of working in terms of bringing back Parliament earlier. What an interesting test that would be.
Okay. Well, let's turn our attention to what Mr. Singh has been saying, the NDP leader. In an interview, he said that his party's plan, the Democrats' plan, is to still topple the Liberals at, quote, the earliest opportunity. At the earliest opportunity. What do you think about that claim from Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader? Josie?
The NDP leader will do and say anything that, counts for his political survival. And I guess I would ask, what has really changed for Jagmeet Singh in this time frame? he's still down in the polls. If the ballot box question, as we discussed, really is about Trump, I mean, how does he have a leg to stand on when the very industries that are under attack are the ones that, he himself has criticized for many, many years? So I think, if you put this to the test, nothing has changed. And I would not count out a flip-flop from Mr. Singh, depending on, who comes out victorious from the Liberal leadership.
Okay, but to what end, though? To what end? What's in it for the New Democrats right now, other than, say, preventing the Conservatives from winning an election in the spring? What's in it for the New Democrats to keep this Liberal government alive at this point, Josie?
They hang on to their jobs for a little bit longer, and I think that is, enough for them to continue for their political survival.
Okay. Christe, Jagmeet Singh says his party still plans to topple the Liberals, quote, at the earliest opportunity. What do you think about that claim from Mr.
Well,
Singh?
we'll see when the earliest opportunity is. If it happens to be after late February, then Mr. Singh will have secured his pension, and we'll see if he goes from sellout Singh to cry wolf Singh. But his poll numbers stink. His fundraising stinks. There is as yet no daylight between him and the deeply unpopular Liberal government he has supported for the last 2.5 years. I would not be surprised if whoever wins the Liberal leadership race tries to again co-opt the Singh NDP and try and ride it out to October. And, that may involve some sort of...
there's still more that we can do, Mr. Singh, on whether, whatever. Yeah. Pharmacare or dental care or whatever.
He may want to, he may think he can get more out of a weakened Liberal government than he ever could as, leader of the third or fourth party, facing a massive pure poly majority. Right. So, if he maybe he can finally get a formal coalition and a seat at the table, which is something he has not managed to do, despite propping up the government to date. So,
I mean, Josie, would you rule out an October election? A lot of people were writing that off just a few weeks ago. Well, there's not going to be an October election. It's going to be as soon as the House gets back, pretty much.
I think if these tariffs come into place, Jagmeet Singh looks at the situation, assesses it, and says, this may be the moment where I continue to back the Liberal government in order to see outcomes. I think the speech writes itself, and would not put it past him to enact it and try and hold off until October and hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel for the NDP party.
All right. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about where things stand right now with the Liberal leadership race and Chrystia Freeland's attempts to distance herself from Prime Minister Trudeau. How is she doing at making that case? We'll ask our panelists when we return. This is the Newsday panel on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
With Josie Sabatino from Sumas Strategies and Chris Day from Winston-Wilmot, it is our Newsday panel. So let's talk about a little bit of the Liberal leadership race and Chrystia Freeland's attempts to distance herself from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So at her launch event in Toronto, which got off to a rocky start, of course, was heckled by pro-Palestinian protesters. Then she gave quite a lengthy speech and then was asked to offer her side of the story on her split with Prime Minister Trudeau, and this is what she said.
For some time, I had been in disagreement with the Prime Minister, specifically over spending. Those disagreements got worse after President Trump threatened to impose 25% tariffs on our country. At that point, I realized that we faced what could be an existential threat. And I realized that we had to really focus all of our energies on being ready for that threat. We had to keep our fiscal firepower dry. I was very clear about that, and we saw the consequences.
Okay. Josie, how is she doing, in your opinion, at trying to distance herself from Mr. Trudeau?
I understand the urge to, look to Trudeau's unpopularity and make the case for oneself, but I find it a hard thing to digest when you've been responsible for the past 4 budgets that this Liberal government has tabled that consisted of billions of dollars of spending and growth in the public service. I mean, these are 2 things that have happened. There is a track record, and while you may want to say, this was all Justin Trudeau's fault, I don't think that this works for Freeland here, and she really does have to answer for some of the policy decisions that she made and that spending that has existed in those budgets.
Right. Wasn't me, it was him. Wasn't me, it was him. And we've been growing apart for some time, especially with the tariff threat. Okay. Chris, what do you think about what she's trying to sell here?
Yeah, Leopard Freeland is going to have a very difficult time changing her spot.
Right.
Look at Hansard, look at the voting records, look at hours of footage of her nodding furiously behind the Prime Minister over the last decade. She has been his deputy, his shadow, his biggest enabler, and that is like a millstone around her neck right now. Not so much within the Liberal Party, because apparently 18, 19, 20 caucus members have already sort of demonstrated their willingness to eschew the past decade and try to recast themselves as non Trudeau supporters. But it's going to be a very, very tough sell with Canadians, and if she wins, may be facing an electorate within mere weeks of taking over the leadership in the Prime Ministership.
Okay. So do you think it's advantage Carney right now, early days into this thing?
Well, I was chuckling over the break.
There aren't many days. I mean, let's face it. Right?
I was chuckling over the break at the notion that Mark Carney might have to bring in Jagmeet Singh into his, cabinet to try and save the government if he wins.
Right.
And what a to be a fly on the wall of those cabinet meetings, right? I think we're all doomed in that instance. But Mr. Carney has a very, very tough road to hoe to separate himself from being a central banker.
From Mr. Trudeau as well. Yeah, but I think that's an easier sell than Ms. Freeland.
But also, a Trudeau booster. And the guy who has been feeding into the Trudeau economic record for the last however many years.
Okay.
It's a tough sell for both of them.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you so much. Stay warm, everybody. Quite chilly in the nation's capital today. Great to hear from you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Josie Sabatino, Senior Consultant, Summa Strategies, Chris Day, the President of Winston Wilmot, all in Ottawa today. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback is coming up right after the news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today's topic, Canada, Trump, and climate change policy. And here's a question to kind of get the conversation going today. Should Canada follow the lead of the Trump administration, roll back some environmental programs, and instead focus more on natural resources development? What would you say? How would you answer that question? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Think of a government that focuses less on climate change, maybe a lot less on climate change, fighting climate change, lowering greenhouse gas emissions, and instead focuses more, maybe a lot more, on natural resources development, whether that's oil and gas or mining or forestry or whatever it is. What do you think of that idea? What would you say? Would you say, yes, look, Canada is a commodities superpower. It could be an energy and natural resources superpower. We have abundant natural resources and we should make the most of them. Or would you say no? The threat of climate change is real, and just because the Americans are doing this doesn't mean it's smart policy. Love to know where you come down on this today. Our call-in line, 1-833-668-2577, was around this time yesterday. Donald Trump was just wrapping up his inaugural address, and he made quite a number of claims about what he plans to do during his second term in office. And one of the things that really stood out, I thought, was what President Trump said about energy and energy development in the United States, and how he wants to make the United States an even greater energy superpower than it already is. Let's listen to a little bit of this speech from yesterday.
Today, I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill. America will be a manufacturing nation once again, and we have something that no other manufacturing nation will ever have, the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we are going to use it. We're going to use it.
And he then went on to outline more about what he would like to see happen on the energy front and on cutting back on various environmental initiatives.
We will bring prices down, fill our strategic reserves up again, right to the top, and export American energy all over the world. We will be a rich nation again, and it is that liquid gold under our feet that will help to do it. With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal and we will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers.
So, I mean, like, drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill. No more Green New Deal. No more EV sales mandate. We have one of those in Canada. And then later in the day, one of Donald Trump's first executive orders was to pull America out of the Paris Climate Accord, something that Stephen Guilbeault called deplorable. Deplorable. So look, that is what is happening just to the south of us. Donald Trump wants to make the United States the energy superpower of the world. He wants to sell American energy all over the world. And he's rolling back environmental programs at the same time. Here in Canada, we still have a carbon tax, at least for now. We have plans for an emissions cap on our oil and gas sector. We have plans for new clean electricity regulations. We have a government that has passed a no pipelines bill, a no tankers bill, a cabinet minister that has called Donald Trump's decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord deplorable. But at the same time, there are those who say we are in a climate crisis. Look around. Wildfires in California, wildfires in Jasper, wildfires from BC to Nova Scotia. Just in the news, the last year, 2024, hottest year on record. And we need to do our part, and the Americans need to do their part too, because we face a climate emergency, and we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we have to limit the rise in global temperatures to no more than 100 degrees Celsius, and all this stuff that we have heard for so long. Climate crisis, climate emergency. And to that end, we should be limiting the use of fossil fuels, the extraction of natural resources, not planning for their expansion. You listen to Donald Trump, he doesn't really see it that way, does he? The plan now, under his administration, is drill, baby, drill. Should that be the plan here, too? What would you say? More oil production, more production of natural gas, more pipelines, more terminals to ship our products to international markets, more mining, especially in the north. What would you say if drill, baby, drill was the plan in this country, too? 1-833-668-2577. All of our phone lines available right now. If you've never called before, just mention that to our call screener, and we'll make your call a priority. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback, and this is News Radio.
something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
In the United States, President Donald Trump is saying his government's energy policy is going to be drill, baby, drill. We're asking, should the Canadian government follow the lead of the United States, concentrate more on natural resources development and less on policies having to do with climate change? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Kitchener first. First-time caller Mitchell is up today. Hi, Mitch.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Great to hear from you today. What would you say?
So, I've been sitting here thinking about, your question that you posed about, would it be smart for us to expand our oil and gas? And frankly, I don't think it would be that smart for us to expand our oil and gas industry for a couple of reasons. Okay. Number one is that I don't think Mr. Trump here is going to have a good time trying to expand his, right? Okay. These are large projects that take lots of, financial overhead to do. And then from there, the second part is, sure, we now have this infrastructure. It's very expensive, and it's also very expensive for us to produce oil compared to, the Middle East or even Latin America, right? There's huge oil reserves now opening up off the coast of Guyana, right next to Venezuela. So we wouldn't win us in Canada, or even the Americans won't win in a race to the bottom, because that's essentially what oil is. It's whoever can produce it at what price, and whoever's producing at the best price and they have the lowest cost to produce wins that race, right?
Okay.
And we can't do it. The technology's not there for it. Alberta oil, the oil out there, is probably the worst oil in the world when it comes to extracting, right? The highest cost to extract, compared to in the Middle East, where they just turn on a tap, or in Latin America, where they just turn on a tap. So okay. I think you'll find we won't have much success in expanding that sector of the economy. But I do believe that, yes, opening up deregulation to things like lithium mining, other natural resources is clearly the smart choice for a future government to make.
All right. Interesting. Thank you, Mitch. We'll see how your opinion carries today. I suspect you're probably going to be in the minority opinion today. Appreciate you sharing it today. From Kitchener, let's go to Mel, is in Red Deer up next. Hi, Mel. What's your opinion?
I kind of go along with their last speaker there.
Okay.
We should develop our other natural resources, because our industries can't, I guess, use what's available right now. If we can, but it's got to be offshore markets. And because of the last 9 years of restrictions, we cannot really ship any oil, increase the amount because of the restrictions put in by the Trudeau government. But the one thing too, with Trump saying drill, drill, drill. Okay,
drill, baby,
he's
drill.
going to produce a lot more oil in the U.S., and he won't need our oil. We should concentrate on completing that Northern Gateway pipeline, or I can't remember what the NATO-funded one was, what the name of it was going to be, where they were going to build it themselves through Prince Rupert. Shipped to the countries that actually need, our oil and natural gas. But right now we only got one port,
one market. Primarily one market, right? Yeah. Okay.
Our LNG could be a big boon, but that's also restricted as to how much that can be shipped overseas. We've had so much restrictions. Another thing. The experts say that Canada only produces 1.4% of the world's CO2, but our grasslands and forests and everything absorb double that. So
that's not what the Canadian government says. That Canada hasn't been a carbon sink for more than a decade.
I rely on Well, I guess I never believe one particular source.
Okay.
I always
all right. Yeah.
access other sources, and
Right.
But so Canada doesn't need to go like this. The carbon tax, that was not ever necessary. Let technology improve what the oil and natural gas can do. I know the oil sands, that's a little harder to do because of the way it's all open, where, the oil in the ground and a normal oil well.
I mean, they're pumping out $4.5 million barrels a day, sir, so they seem to have figured it out.
Yeah, but they figured it out, but it's... I wish we had refineries, because there's a value in other chemicals in the oil sands that they like to get down in the Gulf Coast. They refine it and recover those other ingredients in the oil.
But this idea that we should in this country, because this seems to be a driving force for Donald Trump when you listen to him yesterday, we need to concentrate more on natural resources development, particularly energy, and not worry so much about the fight against climate change. What would you say to that?
No, we have to do our part, but right now we're doing too much of the heavy lifting.
All right, gotcha. Thank you, Mel. Thank you for calling from Red Deer today, and a call from Kitchener, and we're off and running on the Talkback. Join the discussion, will you? This is why we do the Talkback. It's 2 hours to gather your opinions, whatever those opinions happen to be. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
In the United States, President Donald Trump says his government's policy when it comes to things like the oil and gas sector is drill, baby, drill, drill, baby, drill. Without much thought to climate change or the environment, he announced an end to EV sales mandates. He announced an end to the so-called Green New Deal. One of the first things he did was sign an executive order taking the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord. We are asking, should the Canadian government follow that example? Concentrate more on natural resources development, less on climate change policies? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Joe is in Calgary. Thanks for waiting, Joe. Go ahead. You're on the air. What's your opinion here?
Thanks, Rob. Happy New Year.
Yep, same to you. Thanks for calling.
Amongst my many attributes is I can predict the future on what will be announced shortly.
Okay, all right.
In order to get her mega hat, Smith will abandon the $15 billion lawsuit, the IESDS challenge over cancellation of Keystone by the previous administration. Team Canada, which is meeting right now, they're not going to allow any pipelines to run from Alberta to the east. They will concede to having the Keystone pipeline reconnected.
Okay. You mean the Keystone XL pipeline, right down to further into the U.S., right?
Right. It's
yes.
about
Okay.
2 kilometers. It's about 2,000 kilometers long. It's going to carry 130,000 barrels per day in additional product primarily from Alberta. I couldn't understand why the Premier of Saskatchewan didn't back Smith and sided with the other ministers, Prime Minister, the ministers, and leaders from the Northwest Territories. They don't. There's only 261 kilometers of pipeline, and that's only 3 pumping stations, so it's no benefit to them. And I can understand why Mo decided to go the route he did, because there's no other explanation. Now, what's denying pipelines to the east means that there's going to be that $18 to $22, as high as $30 differential between Western Canadian Select and West Texas Intermediate. And I have to disagree with some of your other callers. The the U.S. cannot replace Alberta oil with that from Venezuela. It needs both. And
okay.
If you look at Trump, he's already said, look,
right.
The previous administration has drained their oil reserves, and that's driven the price up. They need that pipeline that's going to give them an extra 830,000 barrels per day to replenish the U.S. reserves, which will bring the price of oil down across the world.
Okay. But what I want to get at is you see a clear, I think, divide between what the American administration thinks the balance should be, say, between the environment and the economy, and what the current Canadian government believes. Do you think that should be recalibrated in any way? That's what I'm trying to get at today.
They've dismissed climate change for the hoax that it is.
Oh, I see. Okay. You think climate change is a hoax, like man-made climate change is a hoax, human-caused climate change is a hoax.
What Trump is really good at doing,
okay,
if he's going to go to war with Canada and Mexico over these tariffs, he's going to do it on many.
Okay, your phone is breaking up, so I'm going to end our call there. Okay, thank you. Not sure if I ever got a straight answer out of you, but thank you for calling and sharing your opinion and offering your insights. Very interesting. We'll be right back. The latest breaking news is coming up next on a very busy news day. And then right back to your calls today as we talk about energy and the environment, Trump and Canada on Talkback on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Trump, Canada, and climate change policy versus energy policy. In the United States, Donald Trump has said his government's energy policy is going to be drill, baby, drill. This is what he said during his inaugural address yesterday.
Today, I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill. America will be a manufacturing nation once again, and we have something that no other manufacturing nation will ever have, the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we are going to use it. We're going to use it.
And then he went on to say, we're ending EV sales mandates. No more Green New Deal. We're out of the Paris Climate Accord. We're asking, should Canada follow the lead of the United States? Concentrate more on natural resources development, maybe a little less on the fight against climate change. What would you say to that? Colin in Calgary, thanks for waiting. Colin, you're up next. What's your opinion, Colin?
Yeah, I guess my opinion is I agree with President Trump 100%. And I think the question to Canadians is really, how poor do you want to be? Because since, this fight on climate change and essentially the attack on, Alberta extracting its resources, like almost every other country in the world would do, Canada, the provinces, not a single province in Canada has a GDP per capita above any United States state. And that's an appalling, statement of affairs. And it's fine to have these social programs. I have nothing against them, but you got to pay for them. You just can't keep borrowing money for this forever. There has to be a solid economy behind this. And I'll quote somebody who said, not a single country in the world would leave 170 billion barrels of oil in the ground. And that was Prime Minister Trudeau.
Yes, I remember when he said that. Yeah, I remember when he said that. Yeah.
We need to have common sense to grow the economy. And I'm, pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, when countries like China don't even have to reduce emissions, like why would we even sign on to that? We're just punishing ourselves, hurting our economy. Kids in Canada have a limited future compared to what perhaps some of us older people had. It's just masochistic to continue this way.
All right. Thank you. Good to hear from you. Yep. Thank you so much. Speaking of the GDP per capita of various provinces, Trevor Toome, the Canadian economist, I believe, from the University of Calgary, did a deep dive on this a few months ago for a publication called The Hub. That do great stuff there, thehub.ca. Highest GDP. He compared all the GDP per capita in all the Canadian provinces versus the 50 U.S. states. Alberta, when you put them all together, Alberta has the highest GDP per capita of all the Canadian provinces at 17th on that list, just behind the state of Minnesota and just ahead of the state of Virginia. And second on that list, Saskatchewan, ranked 9th, just before the state of Utah and just behind the state of Virginia. But then all the rest are way down at the bottom of the list on GDP per capita. British Columbia, 43rd. Newfoundland and Labrador, 47th. Ontario, 51st, just ahead of Alabama and Arkansas. Quebec, 55th. Manitoba, 56th. Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, 58, 59, and 60 collectively. Those three at the bottom. Not great. Shabazz in Calgary. Thanks for waiting, Shabazz. You're on the air. Go ahead. First-time caller. First of all, thank you for being a first-time caller. Go ahead. What's your opinion?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I mean, I honestly, I agree with some of the stuff that the previous caller said, but as Canadians, I've been in Canada 20-plus years now, and I think the first thing that we need to realize is that we are a separate country, and we are not, and we need to get out of this little sibling complex that we have with the U.S.
Okay.
We need to look at our own house, and we need to decide based on what makes sense for us. And it does make sense for us, like the previous caller said, we want to have all of these climate policies. We want to have all of these social policies. Our social, political, and financial situation is different from the U.S., so we can't follow them. But for us to do what we want to do, we need the cash. And at this moment in our life cycles, or at least for our generation, the only cash available is our natural resources. We're not in any other position. We don't have a big, any other big market at this point. We don't have IT. We don't have, manufacturing at that level. Ontario talks about manufacturing, but you just mentioned they're 51st on the list of, GDPs. So at that point, this is all we have. So first, let's make sure that we have the cash flow to spend. And then, yes, we want to spend on greener technology. We want to spend on, making everybody's lives better. But, you got to have the money first. You got to generate the cash to be able to do anything. And we have to look at it from our perspective. We can't be that one baker that bakes the same bread over and over and tries to sell it to the same guy every day. Right? We have to find other markets for our resources. We have to do all of that before we can start talking about the climate and all that kind of stuff. That's great. The short term, you need the money. The long term, you want to plan for the future.
All right. Excellent opinions. Thank you for sharing them and for being a first-time caller. Love to hear from you today. Shabazz out in Calgary. More of your calls just ahead. It's Talkback, and this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
United States, it's going to be drill, baby, drill, according to U.S. President Donald Trump when speaking about his energy policy yesterday. What if we did that here? What would you think about that? Rick in Dartmouth, thanks for calling, Rick. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi. Just straighten out something you said earlier about the wildfires in Nova Scotia. Those weren't caused by climate change. Those were caused by two idiots. One has been charged, the other got away. If nobody had set fires that day, you wouldn't have
Right.
that one to talk about.
But would they have been
carbon
okay? Just hold
dioxide, I
on.
don't
Just
know
hold
if you
on.
know
Just
the
hold on.
carbon
Just hold on.
dioxide cycle.
How they started? Okay, regardless of how they
No,
started,
no,
would
no.
they have
Come on,
been as
Rob.
bad
It's
as?
how they started.
Would they
If
have
they didn't
been
start, you
that
wouldn't be able
bad
to
if
talk
not
about
for
it.
climate change? Okay.
No, I disagree. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant.
Okay.
Do you understand
Well,
that?
it's a greenhouse.
Okay, it's the cycle of life. Without
They say it's a
carbon
greenhouse gas.
dioxide, you have no oxygen.
All right. They say it's a
That's
greenhouse
where the
gas.
oxygen
Nevertheless.
comes from. So anyway, I'm just getting to my
right.
point. That's
Okay.
some of these things were talked about earlier, including by you. In terms of whether or not we should follow the lead of the United States, you're damn right we should. All wealth comes from the earth and the sun. Okay? And I'm a guy who bought solar panels and still has them in 1983.
Okay.
So I mean, the idea this is somehow new in terms of having renewable energy. It's ridiculous. If you bought in then, I'd say it's thousands and thousands of dollars, okay, and left more oil in the ground for other people to use when they need it. But this whole idea of climate change versus environment, it's a non-starter. Let me put it this way. This is a quote by Upton Sinclair. It's difficult for a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. I'll leave it there.
Okay. All right, Rick. It sounds a little annoyed with me today, but that's okay. Dave is in Halifax. I'm sure Rick won't be the first to be annoyed with something I had to say. Dave, you're on the air, Dave. Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Yeah, drill, baby, drill. I think he's going to open up all Alaska. What did he sign the executive order? An emergency energy executive
Declared
order?
an energy emergency. Yeah, declaring an energy
correct.
emergency.
Yeah, he holds a lot of power, and he's going to open up the Enmore Reserve in Alaska, I think, which is the second largest oil in all the United States. So here we go. And look, in Canada, we are blessed with natural resources galore versus other countries. I mean, China has very little natural resources, and it has 1,171 coal-burning plants and opening up others. Rob, do you know where it gets its coal? 27% of its coal comes from Canada to supply its coal-burning factories. So
Okay.
we have 8, I think, coal-burning factories here. One in where I'm just looking across the water here, the Tufts Cove in Nova Scotia. Coal and natural gas. That's where we get our electricity generated from at the moment.
Okay.
So let's not be hypocritical, Canada. We export coal to China so they can burn in their coal-burning energy as an energy source. They've got 1.4 billion people. They have to keep heated up, and they need energy. So let's not. I mean, and we get the carbon tax here. This is the kicker, folks. You know, a nation of 40 million people, very tiny, really, and we're getting burned. The middle class. Some are, some aren't. They say it's swell, but, you know, the carbon tax is killing us. Why should we have to pay the price when I'm sure? I don't think China's paying carbon tax. Rob, are they? Do you think they're being taxed?
I don't know if China has a carbon tax.
I rather doubt it.
So, you know.
So my point is, I think, look, we're one super volcano away from being extinct anyways, and there is a lot of activity in the way of volcanoes at the moment. So anyways, I think,
you would agree if we concentrated more on natural resources development, maybe less on climate change policies?
I think so. Absolutely. I've been around long enough where I haven't seen a whole lot of, I tread carefully, of course, use the wind turbines and whatever, but yeah, I think there's alternative out there, but for now, fossil fuel, baby. That's what it is.
All right, Dave. Thank you for your call.
Cheers.
Bill is in Kitchener. Up next, Bill. You're on the air. Bill, what's your opinion here?
Hello. I'm not annoyed with you, and thanks for taking my call. There's a lot.
You're welcome.
We would agree that, we don't want people to die. We're trying to save the planet, which are all good ideas, right? We would all agree on that. And everything in life is about ideas. So the idea that we have to stop burning fossil fuels to save the planet, we all understand that idea. Now, us as Canadians and other parts of the world, we speak from a place of luxury. We have the luxury to worry about the environment. Now, there's other people that have ideas that are way smarter than me that I listen to, and they say one of the best ways to get the environment better is to get cheap energy as fast as you can to the impoverished people of the world. Because I don't know the numbers. I don't know how many impoverished people there are in the world, like real poverty. They have to burn wood and whatever, garbage. I don't know. And the amount of people that the amount of people that die from that type of living, right, including children, is high. I don't know the numbers. So,
right. Okay.
So everything's an idea. So other people say, let's get cheap energy to all the most poorest parts of the world so that instead of them worrying about what their next meal is going to be, they can start cleaning up their village. So, all these things are just ideas. There's so much to this. And I mean, we don't want children to die. We want to leave a health, so we have to be, responsible. But these narratives that are all, it's kind of echo chamber. And then when you hear people say, well, I don't believe in climate change, well, they're laughed at because these people that make these arguments are speaking from a place of authority. And speaking from a place of authority is never a good argument because there's lots of authorities that aren't funded by government. Who would benefit, like the big lobbyists and the big corporations? Who's going to benefit from all these new green technology? And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but we always have to look at the underlying issues. And we look at it so simply, this is what we got to do.
Like follow the money, you're saying. Follow the money.
And you and I, we speak from a place of luxury, right? Like I can worry about my neighborhood because I don't have to worry about how I'm going to not free. And then on top of that, leading scientists, they're not pseudoscientists, know that if they implement what they want to implement, immediately within days, there'll be 3 to 5 million people starve or freeze to death or what have you. And they're willing to do it.
Okay. Got to stop. We're out of time. Got to stop. Thank you for calling. Thank you for sharing your opinion. It's why we do Talkback, but we have to stop here. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
In the U.S., Donald Trump says it's going to be drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill. What if it was drill, baby, drill in Canada? What would you think about that? Jean in Calgary. Is it Jean? Hi, Jean.
Yes, hi. Yes,
Hi.
I totally agree that climate change is a hoax. It's just faulty ideology.
Okay. So should it, to the question then, should it be drill, baby, drill in Canada then?
Yes, I think that we certainly need to continue with that. I believe everything Danielle Smith is saying. I think she's done great for Alberta. She's doing what a lot of people are sitting back and just thinking about and not saying out loud and not doing it.
All right. Just on this, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but you say it's a hoax. The human-caused climate change is a hoax. Why do you say that?
Well, I think we don't have sound science behind it. I mean, when you look at all the forest fires all over the world that are not managed properly, and volcanoes, and on and on. I mean, how many tons, hundreds of thousands of tons of carbon dioxide is that put into the air?
Right. Okay.
So, I mean,
if it is a hoax, who's perpetrating the hoax, and why would they perpetrate the hoax?
Well, I think that it's all a plan for the one world government, but that's another
one world government. Okay. All right.
Right.
All right. Okay, Gene. Thank you. Good to hear from you, Marg in Listowel, Ontario. Hi there, Marg.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
You're
welcome. I'm agreeing with most of your callers in.
Really?
We pretty much have to follow suit with the U.S. or Canada is going to fall so far behind economically. We'll be starving here in this country. So
we have to do it for our own economic well-being, you think?
Absolutely we do, yes. The carbon tax is actually killing us. If anyone has a real good look at their natural gas bill, they'll realize that we're actually paying more carbon tax on that bill than what we are for the natural gas. And it's time, I think.
I mean, the way the bills are in Ontario, it's kind of crazy, the carbon tax and delivery charges and everything, and HST and everything else. It's easy for the taxes and the fees to outstrip whatever energy you're using, right?
Right. So I honestly feel that that if we don't follow suit with the U.S., we are going to fall.
We're going to suffer for it.
Here. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good to hear from you today. Thank you. That's a quick hour. 1 hour down, 1 to go. And we'd love to hear from you. Lots of time to take your opinion on today's topic. Trump and Canada and energy development and climate change. Right after the news. Hour number 2 of Talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Where we have been talking, and welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. We've been talking about Canada and Trump and energy policy and climate change policy. And we've been asking, should Canada follow the lead of the Trump administration, maybe roll back some environmental programs and focus more on natural resources development? What would you say to that? How would you answer that question? 1-833-668-2577. Again, a little bit of Trump from his inaugural speech yesterday.
We will bring prices down, fill our strategic reserves up again, right to the top, and export American energy all over the world. We will be a rich nation again, and it is that liquid gold under our feet that will help to do it. With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal and we will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers.
So that's the plan, anyway, from the now president of the United States again, Donald Trump. No EV sales mandates, no Green New Deal, pulling the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord, one of his first executive orders. We are asking, should the Canadian government follow the lead of the United States, concentrate more on the natural resources wealth of this country and less on climate change? 1-833-668-2577. Dick, up next in Calgary. What's your opinion, Dick? Go ahead, Dick.
Absolutely. They should do what Trump is doing.
Okay. Why is that?
I'm not a millionaire or a billionaire. I'm not as smart as Trump. He's just talking common sense. I had a discussion with one of my kids, I think it was last week, and she said, "What, you don't care about climate change?" And I said, "Yeah, I care about climate change, and I want to see the results. The money that we put in with our carbon tax, I have not seen the results. And I haven't seen anybody that can tell me what they are, if there are any results."
Okay.
In my lifetime, there's been a string of governments that have made it just about very, very, very difficult, let's say, to get the oil out of the ground that we're sitting on.
Right. Okay.
I think that drill, baby, drill is a good idea.
Drill, baby, drill is a good idea. Okay. Thank you for your call today, Dick, in Calgary today. To Tom in Bedford. Hello, Tom.
Yes. Hi, Rob.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Tom. I hear you just fine.
Hi.
Go ahead. What's your opinion?
Yes. Well, I'm just wondering why we are not considering nuclear, mini or small SMR nuclear reactor solutions for energy that's carbon neutral.
Right.
Other countries.
That's a big thing in Ontario, sir. With if I could just, there are big plans for that in Ontario.
Yeah, Sweden's developing and creating a new technology in the SMR reactors. The United States are developing. Yes, we are in Ontario and other, but we're not seeing it across the country. I'm calling from the East Coast to Canada, and we don't have an abundance of oil per se. So I'm just wondering why we don't consider nuclear for provinces that don't have oil reserves.
Right. Okay. But on this idea of, say, more natural resources development and less policies that are so focused on the fight against climate change, what would you say about that balance there? Does that need to change?
Well, the economy has to take a priority. Without a healthy economy, we can't pay for social programs. So, but it's also at the same time, we also need to very much keep a tight line on our government, cost of government and the waste that exists in government. So I think our governments could do a better job and be more efficient as well, thus making more available for social programs and more, invested into green energy as well.
All right. Thank you for your call in Bedford, Nova Scotia today. Mike is in Halifax. Up next, Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Rob. I definitely think we should be going after our natural resources more.
Okay.
We can be responsible, environmentally more so than other countries. I mean, look at some of the countries in the Middle East. They punch a hole in the ground and dig a trench in the sand and let it flow.
Right.
So as long as they're on it, why not get it from ourselves and do it responsibly?
Right. And it would be interesting to know, I don't have any numbers off the top of my head, are workers here working under, better working and conditions and labor standards, say in northern Alberta than they are, say, in some petro state in the Middle East, for example? I would suspect so.
Assume they are, but
I would suspect so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually, I called in Todd, had the Premier of Nova Scotia on today, and I asked him about, we have 100 years of natural gas reserves here in Nova Scotia, and I'm like, why don't we go after them?
And what did he say?
And all he would say, he said it's a conversation that's going to be had.
Oh, really?
So I don't know what that. Yeah, I don't know if he means once Trudeau and the Liberals are gone. Maybe he didn't elaborate, but he said it's going after our natural resources, our natural gas, and our uranium. He said it's a conversation that has to be had because we're broke, more or less.
We're broke. Okay. All right. That's very interesting to hear that from Tim Houston. Maybe we can get Dave to dig that up. That'd be interesting. Okay. Thank you for your call today, Mike in Halifax. Good to hear from you today. We'll be right back. We'll take another call from Halifax, and we have 1, 2, 3 lines available there. So please join the discussion. 1-833-668-2577. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
In the United States, President Donald Trump has said his government's energy policy is going to be drill, baby, drill. And he also announced the end of EV sales mandates, the end of the so-called Green New Deal. He pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord. We're asking, should the Canadian government follow the lead of the United States or follow the example of the United States, concentrate more on the development of natural resources and less on government policies that are supposed to fight climate change? Join the discussion. Donna in Halifax up next. Donna, thanks for calling. Donna, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I don't always agree with everything Trump says and does, but I do agree with the drill, baby, drill. And I think that Alberta and other places in Canada, if they have it, should do the same. I have a sister living in Alberta, and she said there is no way she'd need about 10 heat pumps to warm her house in the winter because sometimes it goes to -30 to -40. So heat pumps do not work in many, many places in Canada. And that's the big thing. Some provinces, they'll be fine, but not there.
Right.
And another thing I was going to say, I'll say this quickly. There was a guy on from Halifax, actually, earlier, and he did say the 2 fires in Nova Scotia were started by human idiots. And those had nothing to do with climate change. If they hadn't have started the fires, they wouldn't have burned the subdivisions and the properties because the wind, it was windy, and the wind carried it. But if the fires hadn't been started in the beginning...
Yeah, but again, whenever these wildfires break out, it's all over the news. Well, they're worse because of climate change. You see that all the time, experts saying that.
It was worse, but they didn't start because of climate change. It was too stupid, careless people.
Well, whether they started again because of 2 idiots or whether they started by a lightning strike is what does it matter how they started? Were they more intense because of climate change? But anyway,
it was humans that started the original fire. Same thing in California. They've even caught some guy with
Well, I'm talking about the intensity of the fire.
Of the fires
I don't want to get sidetracked on this.
Arson.
All right. I think you're missing my point on purpose, but nevertheless. Okay, thank you. I'll move along. I don't want to get sidetracked into the whole situation with those fires many years ago in Halifax. Kyle in Cochrane. Go ahead, Kyle. You're up next, Kyle.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like the government has their intentions in the wrong place, kind of putting the onus on the people rather than the corporations who are creating the carbon emission problem in the first place. I feel like it's put on our shoulders to put solar panels on our roofs, heat pumps in our furnaces, and EVs in our garages. But really, we should be focusing our intentions on holding oil and gas companies accountable to changing infrastructure. I don't think that the solution is immediate as the government makes it feel. We do have to figure out a way to make this cost effective. Obviously, oil and gas companies aren't clamoring to remove all the infrastructure they put in place in the first place. But if we can put some legislation in place that forces them to put a little bit of their massive profits aside to possibly start investing into nuclear power plants here, there, and everywhere, they can slowly get rid of some of their infrastructure in oil and gas while recouping into a power source that actually has zero emissions and helps this planet. I think there's an idea that we have to make this change immediately rather than a slow burn, which could actually help our economy while getting us into a better place with our energy usage.
All right. Thank you for your opinion. Kyle in Cochrane. To Joe in Kitchener. Joe, up next. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm good. Thanks, Joe. What's your opinion?
Yeah, you know what? Number one, I just wanted to quickly mention about the carbon tax, Rob. I don't have a problem paying a fair carbon tax if I knew where all this money was going. I don't trust this government. I think all the money that all of us are paying for the carbon tax is going into the big box of money that they use for anything and everything else. And I doubt very much that any kind of significant amounts are going to actual climate change. So from that point, I'm not in favor of having to pay the carbon tax anymore, to be honest with you. And the other thing, Rob, is this too, on another note, with Trump saying that with the electric cars, I think it's good. And I think Canada should do the same thing, not force the automakers and not force us to buy electric cars only, because most people can't afford them anyway, and the infrastructure just isn't there. So I'm in favor 100% of let the consumer decide what they want to buy, a gasoline car or an electric one. And that's it, Robbie.
All right. Thank you for your call in Kitchener, Ontario today. More of your calls are just ahead as we continue our discussion today. Trump says it's drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill. No more EV sales mandates. No more Green New Deal. No more Paris Climate Accord. I'm going to abide by the Paris Climate Accord, according to the United States. What about here in this country? You want to follow the lead of the United States? Drill, baby, drill? In Canada? Well, what would you think of something like that? 1-833-668-2577. Lots of time to take your call. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Going to be drill, baby, drill in the United States when it comes to energy policy. What would you think if we did that here? Concentrate more on natural resources development, less on climate change policies. What would you think of that if that was the approach in Canada? 1-833-668-2577. 123 lines available. Wade in Sylvan Lake. Wade, you're up next. Go ahead, Wade.
Drill, baby, drill, Rob.
Drill, baby, drill. Okay. You like that, I guess, right? Yeah.
Well, I do. I've heard a bunch of research on the amount of carbon sinks that we have in this country as compared to the amount of carbon that is produced by our, relatively small oil and gas industry. I think it's a non-issue, really.
Okay.
And, as far as Trudeau's Team Canada goes, he brought all those premiers together. And I understand how standing up for your country is hugely important. But as far as I'm concerned, our premier, Danielle Smith, is the only adult in the room. And the other premiers who are standing up with Trudeau, in my opinion, should be ashamed of themselves for standing with a guy who implemented the Emergencies Act on peaceful protesters from all over Canada.
Right. Okay.
And they had loaded guns pointed at them. They were beaten.
All right. Well, I don't want to get too off track here and start talking about the Freedom Convoy. Let's kind of stay focused here.
Well,
but I do find it interesting now that even the leader of the Bloc Québécois says this idea of stopping energy exports to the United States is absurd, and the big energy export coming out of Quebec would be electricity to places like New York State. And I was wondering when we were going to hear something from either the Quebec premier or the Bloc leader, because I don't think they'd be too crazy about, say, Ottawa collecting a tax on Quebec's electricity exports to New York State and the money going to Ottawa and not Quebec City. I don't think they'd be too crazy about that, the separatists in Quebec. I doubt it.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
Like I said, I think Danielle is the only adult in the room. And, so what did they do? From what I heard, they brought in Rachel Notley into their Team Canada to speak for Alberta. She should not be there. Okay. Danielle Smith spoke for Alberta, and she is speaking for all of Canada. And any one of them premiers, like Doug Ford or even Scott Moe, should have went down with Danielle Smith to meet with Trump, and they didn't. They should have walked in there and looked at Trudeau and said, "You call an election right now."
All right, and in fact, there's a new poll out today that says 77% of Canadians would like to have an election. So more than 3 out of 4 Canadians say it's time for an election. That the government of the United States, the Trump administration, should be dealing with a Canadian prime minister and a Canadian government who actually has a mandate from the people, not someone who has announced that I have 1 foot out the door. I'm resigning. What kind of mandate does this person have? And has prorogued Parliament because he knows the moment that Parliament reconvenes, he doesn't have the confidence of the House and his government would fall. And yet this is the person who is supposed to have some kind of mandate to strike some kind of agreement or try and bend Donald Trump's ear or twist Donald Trump's arm into seeing it our way of things. None of it makes much sense. And I thank you for your call, Wade in Sylvan Lake. But back to the question of the day. For years and years and years, we've been told the environment and the economy, they go hand in hand, and we can grow the economy and have a clean environment at the same time. And yet you listen to what Donald Trump is saying in the United States, going to be drill, baby, drill, baby, drill. And he doesn't seem all that interested about anything to do with the fight against climate change. Green New Deal? Nope. EV sales mandate? No. Paris Climate Accord? Not interested. What if that was the template here in Canada? More calls after the news. I'm Rob Snow. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Canada, Trump, climate change policy, energy policy, natural resources. Should Canada follow the lead of the Trump administration? Maybe roll back some environmental programs. Focus more on natural resources development. Chris in Calgary up next on Talkback. Hi, Chris. You're on the air. What's your opinion?
How you doing, Rob?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
There's a lot of lies in this world, and climate change is the biggest one we have going on right now. It's not a hoax. It's a lie.
Right.
It was started by Al Gore back in the 90s with global warming. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of extremely brain-dead, fake news media, brainwashed idiot morons in this country. And they need to wake up, and they need to wake up now. But, drill, baby, drill. And
drill, baby, drill. Okay.
Let's go after all the resources, and let's start by voting for a man, a real man that can lead this country. And the next time I hear a woman say, "Oh, I voted for Justin because he's pretty," I'm going to slap her.
I've never actually heard a woman say that, but
well,
anyway.
I've heard many of them say it. So
okay, all right.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have said it myself.
Okay.
But we really need to wake up in this country. We had 11 million people in this country in the First World War. 1.5 million of those people went to war and fought for us. Fought for the freedom that we have now.
Right.
And we have all these lazy idiot morons that watch the fake news and believe everything that these morons tell us. And that's a tragedy in itself.
Okay.
We are not Canadians anymore. We are led by idiots, and we have become.
Well, I'm still a Canadian, sir. If you don't want to be a Canadian or you don't feel Canadian, I don't know what I can do to help you feel more Canadian, but
that's another thing. We're not going to be Canadian much longer. The Americans are taking over us. We will be the 51st state, and that's just the way it's going to be. And that's another thing. Canadians are going to have to wake up and realize that we're not going to be Canadian anymore. We're going to be American, and that's going to make a lot of changes, especially in the healthcare industry. Because we have so many hypochondriacs in this country that are walking into the hospital wasting Canadian taxpayer money for absolutely no reason.
Okay, I don't want to get way off track onto that whole thing. Thank you for your call. I don't think I ever got an answer out of you, but I'll let you go on your little rant. I hope it makes you feel better. Let's go to Paul in Calgary. Hi, Paul. Let's focus here, people. It's a pretty easy question that I'm asking here, okay? All right. Go ahead, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I was just thinking that Calgary has such a wide spectrum. You know, we've got all our progressives and we've got a lot of conservatives, hardcore conservatives. We all kind of speak in generalities. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you just fine.
We all speak in generalities the more convicted we are, you know, but when we've got to make an argument, we've got to be specific. And I just, you know, it's tough because the rest of the provinces, they see Alberta as this, you know how Nemsky said, with this knuckle drag, you know, all this kind of mischaracterization. And it's really tough. But speaking as Albertan, I agree a lot with what Chris said. I know he comes across as harsh. But what I'm saying is that the other provinces, they've got to start to understand that the way they're going about doing things with Trump is so wrong. I was one of the guys who called in and said that, hey, it's going to be a blowout in the election. I also think the tariffs, this is even February 1st where he says they're coming in. It's constantly a negotiating tactic to get the other premiers, not Danielle Smith, but to get them to show their cards, right? And they're falling right into it. And I find it very, very difficult to think that, you know, when we look at what Trudeau is doing now. Anyway, I'm gonna let it go because I want to try to make some salient points. But I think the other premiers have got to start to take Danielle's lead because they're already following Trump, walking right into what he's doing. She at least holds her cards a little close, so she could then try diplomacy first, then the hardcore if it comes to it. But I don't think it'll come to it. I really don't think. I think he's using this all as posturing tactics. Okay, thanks for taking my call.
All right, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, I kind of want to circle back and kind of focus on the issue that I'm putting to the people today. Okay. When you listen to Donald Trump, he doesn't sound like someone who is concerned about climate change. His plan is to make America great again. And that includes making the United States even more of an energy superpower than it already is, right? Drill, baby, drill, drill, baby, drill, drill, baby, drill. And here in this country, let's face it, no matter where you live in the country, you know this. We have had a liberal government in Ottawa that has made the environment and climate change part of its whole identity, to the extent it changed the name of the government department that used to be called Environment Canada. Now it's called Environment and Climate Change Canada. It used to be the Minister of the Environment, and that person is now called the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. It's part of the liberal identity in this country. And I would say the New Democrats and the Bloc and all the other progressive parties, these are their policies. And there are many policies. The emissions reduction plan and the carbon tax and the clean fuel standard and regulations about methane emissions and emissions from public buildings and clean electricity standards opposed by provinces like Alberta. Decarbonize. I mean, when you read the government's literature, you see that word all over the decarbonize. We have to decarbonize. Decarbonize transportation, heavy industry. We need an emissions cap on the oil and gas sector, another sore spot on the West, running ads across the country about that now. EV sales mandate. Net zero goal of 2050. Carbon capture and storage, electrifying the public transit fleets, billions of government dollars for electric vehicle charging stations. But our largest trading partner, and in energy, our biggest competitor really in the energy market, now with this administration doesn't seem all that concerned about any of this stuff. Instead, the policy is going to be drill, baby, drill. Should that be the policy in this country? 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's go to Mo in Calgary. Up next on Talkback. What's your opinion on the topic today, Mo?
Oh, my goodness. I barely watched any of the Trump inauguration. It was just nauseating. But
oh, really? Okay.
He's in it. He's in it for the money. He's got all his billionaires lined up, and money's his favorite thing. I think we also have a climate crisis here. I don't know why nobody figured that one out. But with our oil and gas, I think we need to keep it close to the vest or the chest. Oops.
Okay. Why is that?
Because, well, I think we need a pipeline going east. So there's, the ports are open, and we can sell to partners, all over the world. Where, and I know the U.S. gets a lot of heavy oil out from us. And I believe in the States they only have light oil and gas, so it's not, they need our stuff.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how it's going to work with the, the tariff, because I just don't know if we can afford to actually import any of the, food from the U.S. And if they're, going to get rid of the only people that work in the field, who's going to pick the fruit and that sort of thing. So I think it's a big worry, I'd say, more so for
bit of a
them,
mess. Yeah, a bit of a mess. I do like your point. I want to get too off topic again, but My gosh, imported food. Imagine a 25% retaliatory tariff on food coming from the United States with a 69-cent dollar. Oh my gosh, that would be painful, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, sure would. Yeah.
Here in
Okay.
Calgary, you can still buy a for like $3. What is it going to be? $15 for a grapefruit?
Okay. I may be looking for alternatives if it's that price. Okay. Thank you. Mo. Stan also in Calgary today. Stan. Hi, Stan. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Rob.
Hi,
Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you having this discussion, at least, and putting some of the ideas out there.
Right.
I've got grandchildren living in Alberta right now. I live in Calgary. And, I'm concerned about what world I'm passing on to them, and I'm concerned about climate change. There's got to be some way that we can balance it. You can't turn off the taps right away anyway. It doesn't matter. I don't want to follow Trump. I'm a Canadian, not an American.
Right.
Once we start following them there, that becomes a really slippery slope. There are too many things that we can get in trouble with there. I've got too many other things, and you've got people that want to talk, but no to this climate change.
No to this. Okay. All right, Stan. Fair enough. Thank you. Let's go to Doug is in Waterloo. Let's bring on Doug.
Hi, thanks
Ontario
for taking my call. I'm sorry.
You're welcome, Doug.
Thanks for taking my call. I got a bunch of things to say. That lady who said about the New World Order, the one world government, there was kind of a scoff from you. If you take an American $1 bill, flip it over on the left-hand side.
Oh, yes. We've been through this all. Yeah, Doug. Okay. I don't want to get into this with you again. We went through this a few weeks ago with you. Jeff in Calgary is up next. Jeff. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Jeff. Thank you.
Great. Look.
Yeah.
I think
go ahead.
It's obvious that we need to increase the utilization of our resources and everything. I think the thing that people don't understand is that we already do this better than anybody else in the world. We're already working towards being as green as possible. We're safer than anybody else. There's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't increase utilizing and pulling our resources out of the ground. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump and what he's doing. It's just that it's time for the government to stop being so restrictive and just let us get to work the way we can do it. And I mean, when you're talking about carbon and the climate, Canada is such a small scale of input compared to the entire world that it's honestly, the argument and the discussion is not required. So
okay,
we're the best at it. We should continue to do it. I don't understand what the real discussion is here.
Well, there's obviously a discussion to be had about it. Thank you so much. I mean, just think about some of the things that have come up even in the last week and a half, as this threat of tariffs has been thrust upon us, and all the questions about Alberta's energy and being on Team Canada, and Danielle Smith going to all of this stuff. Alberta wanting to double its oil production. Let's get more pipelines built. Build a pipeline east, build a pipeline west. Revive Northern Gateway. Revive Energy East. In Quebec, there was a big LNG project in Quebec. Energy Saguenay. Maybe revive that. Could you ever even revive that? I don't know. These are some of the ideas that are out there. Is it time to, again, I come back to this, recalibrate, rethink the balancing act between the environment and the economy? Back with more of your calls. Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been asking, President Donald Trump has said it's going to be drill, baby, drill in the United States. What if we had a similar approach here? More focus on the development of natural resources projects, maybe less focus on government policies that are designed to combat climate change, for example, lower greenhouse gas emissions. What would you say to that? Janice is in Calgary. Hi, Janice.
Hello?
Hi, Janice. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi. How are you, Rob?
I'm okay, Janice.
Okay,
Thank you.
Basically, I have one question. What are our roadways made out of?
What are our roadways made out of? Asphalt. Yeah.
Is that carbon?
I suppose there's carbon in it. Yes.
So if they change to electric cars, are they going to change the highways too?
I don't know. But look, I'm asking a pretty basic question here, ma'am. Drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, well, I guess you'd need for more roads too. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, this is an interesting development. Canadian Press is reporting the president of the BC Indian Chiefs, Union of BC Indian Chiefs, is reversing his previous opposition to the scrapped Northern Gateway pipeline project, linking Alberta to the Pacific Ocean. This posted just about 20 minutes ago by the Canadian Press News Service. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip says while he really fought against Northern Gateway's construction before it was scuttled in 2016, that was a, quote, different time, and Canada now has no choice but to reconsider. That comes after Alberta Premier Danielle Smith suggested on social media that construction of the pipeline needs to immediately start to diversify Canada's export market in light of U.S. President Donald Trump's threatened tariffs on Canadian exports. Phillip says he is concerned that if Canada doesn't build that kind of infrastructure, Trump will, and would do so without any consideration for the environment or the rule of law. Wasn't that interesting? Amazing how, yes, times have changed. I guess just say in closing, we have such a vast abundance and supply of natural resources in this country, the third largest proven oil reserves. We are already a top producer of natural gas. We have massive coal reserves. We're already the top producer of potash. We're among the top producers of uranium, and we are among the top producers of gold and copper and nickel and iron ore and platinum and diamonds. And it's a very, very long list of very valuable natural resources. And what we've been asking is, should we have policies that look to maximize the production of these natural resources, maybe even if that comes at the expense of policies that are aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions and trying to fight climate change? I mean, maybe it is time to make up for lost time and decisions made by the current government, like the mistake of telling other countries that there's no business case for LNG. The United States only began exporting liquefied natural gas in 2016. And here we are less than a decade later. The United States has the most LNG export capacity in the world. And yet, here in this country, our government said no business case for LNG. And while he was telling other countries, no business case, the United States completed construction under both Republican and Democrat administration's 7 LNG export projects. What if we had done that? What if we can still do that? Should we do that? A question that will quite likely need an answer in the years ahead. I'm Rob Snow. Thank you for listening. Talkback returns tomorrow. New topics, more calls. The latest breaking news next on News Radio.